to our fall bid board meeting in prep for our annual meeting, which will be on November 9th. So let's do a roll call.
Mary Boyd.
Here.
Larry Delo. Brent Felchlin.
Here.
Tom Gavick.
Here.
Maya Romboy.
Here.
Rich Starry.
Here. All right, great. Let's move to approval of the minutes of our December 14th, 2021 Business Plan District Board meeting. Rich, we have a second?
I'll second that.
Brent seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Next item. Any public comments on matters not on the agenda? I'm looking out to our vast community.
Public comments? No.
No, I think we're good.
The only comment I am going to make, it's sort of not on agenda, but it is agenda, just for context and also for our notes. I had asked a small group of building owners, bid members, to gather with Rich and I, representing the board, to just do some brainstorming and catch up on the district. And we had a very productive couple-hour jam session yesterday, which we will help inform some of our agenda going forward. But I just wanted to make that note so that everybody knows that we had that jam session. So that's all I have. Any other comments before we keep moving forward, Dan?
Just like to welcome Maya to the bid board, and maybe you can do an introduction for the other members.
Oh, sure. Really excited to be here. I have lived in De Pere for the last 4 years. We moved here from Milwaukee. I currently work at School Specialty near Appleton. I run a large portion of the website for the company. And previously I have served on as president and board chair for the East Tosa Alliance, which is a similar organization to Definitely De Pere in Wauwatosa. I served on that board for, I think, 8 years. Ran a lot of events, worked with the community and business owners, so definitely have experience in this space, but I'm very excited to be here.
That's awesome. So great to have you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for accepting that
Thanks, Dan.
appointment. And maybe just in terms of introduction, just in case, Maya, we don't know each other. Brent, let's just do a quick introduction, who we are, what our business is, and maybe where we're located and how long we've been in the community, something like that.
Good morning, Brent Felchlin. I own Great Harvest Bread Company and the property that it operates in. Been there for about 10 years and DP resident for probably 15 now.
Great. Thanks, Brent. Tom Gavick, resident for about 30 some years. Live in West De Pere, building at 301 Main in West De Pere. Run a business called Credo, which focuses in higher education work nationally. So we have our one office here in De Pere and another office in North Carolina.
Rich Starry Realty, so mainly residential real estate. That's my address, 112 North Broadway.
I've seen it.
And I've been in De Pere
He's the Halloween guy.
for almost 30 years as a resident.
Mary Boyd, Union Hotel, 200 North Broadway, and I'm actually a lifetime resident. Yeah.
Well, Maya, welcome. Thank you again for
I'm feeling
joining
very
the
much
board.
the newbie here.
We'll have you dive in and help. All right. If no other comments, we good? So let's go to item 4, annual election of officers. And so I think we have.
Chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Okay.
Oh, treasurer. Sorry. Yeah, it's typically Larry is in that
role.
treasurer secretary role. Yeah. So and he would continue that role even though he's not here today. So you can make a recommendation or a motion with a second and for each one of those individually.
We have to do them individually?
Yep.
All right. So for the election of chair, I'm volunteering to remain chair. We have a first.
For Tom.
Motion, second.
Second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Vice chair.
Vice chair, Rich Starry. Do we have a nomination or a
I'll make a motion.
Motion,
Oh,
Mary seconds. All in favor?
aye.
All right, welcome.
And
Larry
then-
Delo as
Mhm.
secretary,
Secretary Treasurer.
secretary treasurer. Motion? I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're good on that. I did want to just, for clarification, and you can help clarify this. So Maya is filling a seat. Just as a reminder, we have 7 board members, and those are outlined in our documents, our founding documents.
Mhm.
And one needs to be a community member. There's a couple business/building owners and a couple or 3
Yep.
building owners.
We have it here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one community member, non-property owner, and no investment in business, which Maya fulfills, and at least two property owners, one representative from hospitality, one from retail service.
And office.
And one from office, and then also a city staff representative.
Got it. So Larry fills our city staff.
Yep.
Correct.
Maya joins us as the community representative.
Yep.
The rest of us represent building owners and /business people
In one of those
in one of
categories.
those categories.
Yep.
So we have one open seat, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
So the charge I want to put out to the board, and really the bid community, in partnership with Dan and Tina, will be looking and thinking about this as well. We need to fill a seat. So instead of just that popping up and all of a sudden the mayor appoints somebody, I want to be more intentional about that this year, so we don't have to rush into that. Right, Dan? Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
I'd like to do it in the next couple months, but,
Mhm.
so I'd like to get some ideation going in the next couple months, and
So that person would have to have what? Building owner or?
we already have at least 2 building owners, one representative from service and retail, one from hospitality, and one from office. Now they can cross over, you know, you may touch on both of them on 2 of those categories. So, yeah, that's,
so it could pretty much be anybody.
Yep.
That owns a building.
And just to add, I think looking from the makeup too, the seat that is vacant is from Angela Patel. I think a West of here could round out, when we look at the makeup right now, we have strong representation from East of here. And Dan and I talked a little, I think the hospitality or service retail would be the 2 logical categories.
So anyway, let's give that some thinking over the next couple months, and we'll make sure that gets filled, you know, as we move into the new year.
Mhm.
All right. Item 5, Redo Downtown De Pere Bid Improvement District Summary Report and benchmark community comparisons.
All right, so before Tina jumps off into these first ones, these next 3 items are going to be a little bit different from what we've done in the past. There's a much more deeper dive, and the reason for that is I think we've all sort of recognized over the past few years that the operational changes of the bid itself, plus definitely De Pere, have sort of forced us to have a kind of a internal discussion. So this first item, number 5, is going to tee up a lot of the discussions that will follow. So there's going to be a lot of good information in this first one as sort of like where we are, how we're doing, how we compare. But then that will feed into the other 2 agenda items that we'll talk a little bit about here today. So just kind of keep that in mind. We don't have any formal action items. There's no motions really today, and out of these 3 items, it's just directing staff to follow up after our discussions here. So with that, I'll kind of tee this one off for Tina. She'll go through these kind of the annual report, and then we'll do a deep dive into the goals, priorities, and then some assessment discussion. So,
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me, or should I do this? And as Dan said, this looks a little different. Typically, we're taking a look at a draft of an annual report from the previous fiscal year. We will have that presented to you at the annual meeting. This is more just to provide a better understanding of what a business improvement district is, how bids are managed, what other funding sources organizations use to supplement and leverage bid revenue. So we'll kind of slides. You do all have a printed copy of this in front of you. So as we get into other agenda items, we can reference back to some of the information. Excuse me. As I said, I'm not going to read through this, but it's just there for information and to provide that understanding. A bid is a special assessment that's used to implement programs aimed at promoting, developing, redeveloping, and managing the district. It was created in 2014. I could have added those dates, or established in 2014, started in 2015, and it was, the purpose was so that property owners could work together with the city to develop the downtown. Next slide. We did this introduction already, so we can pass over this. This is just giving a snapshot and an overview of just some facts of what other bids, the composition of other bids throughout the state. This is data that was collected in 2019. There were 48 of approximately 85 bids at the time that reported. Currently, there are about 90 active bids in the state of Wisconsin. Average number of parcels that contribute to the district, it's 158, and in 2022, we had 145 of the 220 parcels that contributed or that were assessed. Average bid assessment statewide in 2019 was $3.23 for every 1,000 in value of parcel. DPR's assessment is currently at $1.75. And then also just a snapshot of average annual budgets of those organizations that reported is $301,000. Definitely DPR's annual budget this current fiscal year is $235,000. Just wanted to kind of take a look at revenues, other revenues that bid, or organizations, I should say, that manage bids supplement the assessment by a variety of sources. And I just listed those out in percentages of organizations that do receive that type of funding. And the second column is just definitely DPR showing. So currently, we do not have an active grant program. I was going to put a check mark in there. We've had grants over the years, but that's definitely an area that as we move on, that we can better take advantage of and utilize. The right-hand column just is a nice pie chart showing our overall budget. So as you can see, 34% of our operating budget is from bid assessments. The 41% events, that actually could be titled earned income. So that's income that we earn through events, sponsorships, anything event related. This is something that definitely DPR board has really strived to diversify. If you looked at this pie chart 5-6 years ago, the bid assessment comprised at that time about 85%. When the bid started, it was closer to 100%. Activities, just wanted to kind of provide, our work is divided into a variety of focus slides. So the next two slides will show that streetscape improvements. We know that is a really important function of a business improvement district. We know that aesthetics of a downtown is linked very strongly to economic development. It's really important that we create an environment. People come to expect a certain level of cleanliness and beautification and security. It's something that is linked not only to economic development, but to economic development in the way that it's providing an environment that people want to return to time after time. Historic preservation activities, that's an important revitalization tool. It's really was kind of the Kickstarter to the Main Street movement that began in the 1970s. Historic buildings, architecture, really create, I think we all can agree, really create our downtown's unique identity. Promotion, you'll see a lot of activities. That means that we're selling the image and the promise of our downtown to all prospects, whether it be users of downtown, investors, new businesses. All of the promotional activities are a way to just create that positive image through advertising, retail activity, special events, marketing, campaigns, etc. Next slide. Oops. Special events, again, I think we know that special events are an incredibly important placemaking tool. People crave enjoyable, memorable experiences. And again, metrics of success revolve around increased foot traffic, investment, sales volumes, physical improvements. We've had some big wins the last couple of years with the Art Alley and the Welsh Plaza, as well as the Mid-Block Crossing. Again, physical improvements really help just create that sense of place. And public spaces are incredibly important to give people a reason not only to come downtown, but to stay longer and to return. Business assistance programs that we're involved in are really designed to address the needs and the challenges that small businesses have in our community so that they can continue to survive and thrive. So you'll see some ongoing programming like technical assistance, business recruitment, retention, but also some really big initiatives that we were able to immediately implement was the COVID response program, as well as the turbo building emergency response activities.
In addition to that one, I would also say your role, and definitely De Pere's role in the continued efforts by the state through the Badger Bounce Back Grant Program.
Yeah, thank you.
So definitely De Pere has been a kind of key player in that, providing that letter of support for businesses coming into the region for that additional dollars. So.
Yeah, I'd like to add that up for the next meeting because I'm pretty certain we've probably provided support for about 30 businesses that have either opened into vacant spaces, relocated into vacant spaces, or expanded. So that's a lot of dollars that have been brought into the community. Next slide, I'll include this in the annual report. I don't know that this is appropriate in this report, but it's nice recognition. The Wisconsin Main Street program recognizes the outstanding revitalization efforts of Main Street communities, which there are about 38 statewide. So we've had some really significant number of awards. Various property owners, definitely De Pere and the city of De Pere, have been recognized throughout the years of the bid. Now we get to the numbers. I think these are the slides that we'll be referring to as we move on in the agenda. We did put together a comparison of activity from other bids. These are benchmark communities. These are Main Street programs. That's the data that we have available to us in regards to net new businesses, jobs, private investments, number of events, attendance. The second line shows definitely De Pere's stats, and then the bottom two lines is we have a benchmark average and then a benchmark median. And now we're looking into, as we talked about at the end of last fiscal year,
Tina, one quick question. As we gather that data is coming from all the programs that send their data to Wisconsin, to the state?
Correct.
Is there like a report or something that we pull that from?
So actually Main Street programs, and there are more categories
Right.
that we also report on, but to be an accredited state and national Main Street program, we're required to report on a monthly basis. So this data is from Wisconsin, Maine has a different fiscal year than us. It's July 1st to June 30th. So this is the 21-22 data. I can pull that to coincide with our fiscal year as well, but this is data that all of those programs are required to report on.
Right.
On an annual basis. Next is bid assessment comparisons. We do have a couple of non-Main Street programs because this data is gathered from the UW Extension Community Development arm of that program. This is, and we looked at benchmark communities and then reached out to each of these communities to get their most current assessment data. Again, DPR is in the second line. I kept it alphabetical. And then at the very bottom, not part of the chart, shows the benchmark average is 289 per thousand dollars in assessed value, benchmark median 278, and again, the state average is 323. When you look at the last two columns, we also looked at minimums and maximums, so that gives a good kind of indication comparison of those benchmark communities. And the last slide is for your reading pleasure. I think it's always important to get feedback and to share that feedback. So we pulled together some testimonials that we had received in emails over the years, also reached out, but you can just kind of, see what downtown residents, property owners, business owners, community members, users of our downtown are saying about us. You're giggling about MJ. Okay, I did.
I was just saying, Rich didn't make the cut.
I did.
No, Rich, I did. We actually, MJ, well, Rich Starry was one of the visits on the DPR Business Walk, and MJ was just, we didn't ask, just glowing and spewing and just how much she loved. And I thought, okay, you need to put that in words so we can share that.
Just glad to see somebody. That's so slow.
Any questions, comments?
Maybe just a reminder on the benchmark cities.
Yes.
Was there like like the next 5, they go, nah, it's not really gonna make it? Or are there other communities that?
From the Main Street approach, I think those are the closest in size and some of them in location. But I do think, from the just the business improvement districts that are non-Main Street programs, there may be others out there that we can take a look at. This was the data that we had readily available at this time.
Yeah.
But all of that data is public, and it's a matter of phone calls, so we can absolutely take a look at others.
A couple of the other targets that were for benchmarks were not only just of population size, others that had a similar water feature in their downtown, somebody who may have had that sort of issue with having some access to water or the beautification in their downtown. Took a look at, do any of them have a satellite or university presence in them? Try to see if there's some sort of educational presence in them. Try to take a look at any of those that are growing from a certain perspective to see, do we kind of trend with those. So that was the reason why you do see what you see on here. Others on there that also include just kind of a focus on a downtown of a very similar comparable size of the bid. So we kind of had that perspective as well. So some of these, the reason why you don't see a lot of the bigger ones on there is because one, they're either really big or they're just really small, but they, community may have 15 of them instead of just one large one.
Right.
So try to keep it close to relatively comparables in all of those aspects.
Well, we have a couple minutes. I'd love to just brainstorm a little bit on this. If anything just bubbles up, that we could have staff either investigate to see, are they on the list? Can we even get the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
can you help me, where Carroll University, just Waukesha. It's got water, it's got a private college. I'm not sure how big it is.
Waukesha's a lot bigger than
Is it
A lot bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know one thing I thought of that I was more curious about is De Pere is different from a lot of these other cities in that we're in close proximity to a larger metropolitan area or part of a larger metropolitan area. A lot of these cities are kind of standalone small towns, so I don't know how that would impact. Wauwatosa's a little tough to look at because they have multiple bids versus one bid, so that would be one I would say we should benchmark, but it's a little tougher to look at. But if there's like a
How big is
Madison area.
Wauwatosa?
Wauwatosa, I'm not even sure. More than 50. It's more than double the size of De Pere. But maybe a suburb of Madison would be one to look at.
Okay.
They've got water, larger metropolitan.
Cedarburg was brought up
Right,
yesterday.
yeah, in our brainstorm yesterday, Cedarburg.
Okay.
Port Washington.
Oh, good.
I can't remember what else was brought up. I think Wauwatosa was the other one that was brought up.
Yeah, Wauwatosa was actually 50,000.
50,000 Wauwatosa.
48,000.
So how many bids are there? 2 or 3?
There's 2 formal bids, and then the one that I was a member of was part of the Main Street program, but it was not a bid. It was not supported financially by a
And
bid.
it wasn't supported by either of those 2 bids?
Mm-mm. No, but they do have a bid in their like village area, their main downtown area.
Do we know how many of our bid members max out?
We'll get through that
Oh, okay.
future discussions. I got it
Okay.
slides.
All right. Any other comments on other bids? I think this is just, yeah, this is just super helpful. And I know there's that, those differences and everything, but I think this is just the second year that we've sort of looked into this. And so I just really appreciate that kind of comparison.
Well, I do have one more. Shorewood would be a really good one.
I had also just wanted to see if Grafton had something of
Yeah. Shorewood is similar to De Pere in that it's really close to Milwaukee, like we're very close to Green Bay.
Okay.
And they've got UWM right there, close to a waterway, all of those things that we discussed. And they have a lot of variety of businesses as well.
Good. Those are good suggestions.
I do have a list of all bids in the state from this is a 2018. So as we talk, I'll
Yeah.
kind of look through and see if any of these are represented on here. Yep, I think, but I'll make sure I got the ones you have.
Okay. I want to make sure we keep going and keep on schedule. Good.
All right. Well, let's kind of move it forward here. So, as Tina sort of teed it up, I'm gonna have a lot more words and data on here. I'm gonna get real dorky with us, so I apologize. I'm the numbers guy. So, as we mentioned, sort of the Main Street program was established, actually even before the bid was. It was sort of reestablished through that discussion in
2012.
Oh, gotcha. I'll pull it closer. Thank you. Bid was formed in the 2014 to serve the 2015 calendar year. Of the original, I took a look at the original plan. It included 14 action items at that time. And I kind of compared it to where we actually sit from last year's plan. 11 of those 14 items are still in the plan. Which either means we want to continue doing those things or the plan sort of has just slightly evolved over its time. When I mean slightly evolved, it also added double the amount of action items, but the assessment didn't increase at any point during that time. It's actually decreased by about $3,000, partially due to businesses leaving the business improvement district, primarily the Cress Inn after it removed itself from TID number 5 after the city closed it, as well as some fires that took down some buildings and a variety of other things that have sort of kind of maintained a relatively low fluctuation, but did decrease. As I mentioned, we sort of doubled our operating plan action items, and the reason for that is, and this is Tom and I and Tina have sort of talked about this to great lengths, is the annual operating plan for the bid has sort of morphed into the annual operating plan for Definitely De Pere. And as we can tell by the funding sources, that is no longer the case. When it was first created, it made sense. But as the years have progressed and Tina and her crew have leveraged the dollars from the bid to do more work to almost a 3-to-1 ratio, we now have an operating plan that we're sort of trying to force it to be Definitely De Pere's operating plan, when it should have actually just been the bid's operating plan telling Definitely De Pere, out of the 80 some odd $1,000 that you currently have and the 30 some odd percent of your budget, 35% of your budget, this is what we'd like you to focus those efforts on. Versus we're going to throw everything in the plan, including things that may not be able to be accomplished with that amount, but we want it all listed in there. Well, that's truly not a great way to have a plan. It's not a great way to have metrics. It's not a great way to kind of put a vision forward. So as a result of that one, we're going to spend a little bit of time here today talking about some priority projects, and I know, Tom, you're going to kind of lead with some of those things as well, and I have your bullet points in slide here. But really kind of hone in on, as a bid board, out of that list, what should we be really focusing on and telling definitely to Pere, this is what we need you to work on, but also how do we do metrics tracking behind that one so that we can make sure that of that percentage dollars, we know that it's being put towards that program and we're getting the reward towards that program. And if we're not getting the reward towards that program, maybe we tweak it in future years and shift and do different priorities. If we're not really truly tracking what percentage of the bid income is doing its work, we don't really have a metric to show our performance truly for those dollars. So I think we've all sort of recognized that it's just evolved over the past 8 years to where it is now, and it's an important point to almost true up ourselves in an operation standpoint. So with that, I keep thinking this is a computer. So in our kind of budget, I kind of did talk about that one. Our goal is to actually have, and I've talked with Tina about this one, definitely De Pere should have its own operating plan in which the bid's operating plan feeds into it. Because as we start to clearly identify what we want to focus on, that's what definitely De Pere needs to be able to put in theirs. From a timing standpoint, that means we need to start planning for bid actions earlier in the year. Right now, we're in the October timeframe, which is when a lot of bids do their planning. But as Tina showed on her slide, a lot of those bids function with one sole income source or the matching fund from the city or the municipality. The bid and the municipality contribution is the only part of it. Because definitely De Pere is doing so many other things that is necessary to function of a successful downtown, they need proper planning as well. So as you see, the kind of the last kind of note on that, where in future years, starting next year, we want to make sure that we're planning sooner, getting our hands dirty in the July timeframe, so that we can really hone in on kind of fleshing out some ideas in greater context. Not to say we aren't going to really work on some of those things in the meantime, but we truly need to kind of spend the next almost 6 months kind of creating that game plan, so that when that July timeframe comes, we have a good sense and a good data and a good plan to move forward. It's not moving forward. There we go. So I don't know, Tom, I kind of teed you up for this one. If you just wanted to touch base a little bit about your small group discussion, and then I have another slide as well from yours.
Yeah, so this is a summary actually that came out of our March gathering of the bid members. And we had all 16 listed on a sheet, and we just asked at the end of our gathering, we said, would you take a sheet and just sort of pick your top 3 that you think that we should give more focus and energy towards? And so this just summarized that. So the bullets literally are from our 2022 plan priority projects that we just brought out, and the feedback from, I think we had probably 25 building owners at that March meeting. And so those top, 6 bullets were those activities that somebody ranked in their top 3 choices. So we just summarized that and then gave some direction around, here are the lowest priorities that folks voted on as well. So that just gave us a little bit of context. And then in preparation for today's meeting and then ultimately the November meeting, I just wanted to get some other insight from some of our bid members. So I tried to get sort of a cross-section, like Mary Alexis, Bridget O'Connor, Andy Kranz, Jason, Rich, and I. There were 6 of us that met yesterday morning and had a 2-hour just sort of catch-up and jam session on. We reviewed the draft that Tina walked us through just for context. And then we pulled out that sheet of feedback that we had gotten from the member folks around top priorities, and we just looked at that list and said, if we were going to begin shifting towards the actual assessment funds to go towards the top priorities of the bid district, give us some input into that and feedback into that. We had really good discussions about that we could lift up some ideas to be able to bring to this meeting and use it for some discussion, as well as provide that to Dan and Tina to start as they're thinking about actually creating the plan for our review and approval, that we've just got some insight regarding that. Knowing that as we get into next year, we could start getting much more intentional about this. And I just sort of mentioned this at the last bid board meeting, as I want the board to get more actively engaged in the actual planning of those priorities for the district. To give that headlights, it really has been for 8 years, really deferring to staff, both Dan and Tina in those roles, to bring the plan forward, and then we went through the process of approving, getting feedback, approving, and then gathering the assessment. And that, I think there's some good energy from our last 2 meetings in March and in the last one that we had with Mike Van Esten, of just the district itself wanting to get more actively engaged, and as a board then us playing a more active role in making sure that kind of planning calendar actually happens. So instead of thinking about this as, oh, we're done with this meeting or the November meeting and now we come back again next fall, I want to start setting up an actual calendar of when we're going to have gatherings that might be more focused on just the bid coming together to get to know each other and build relationship and ideation, and then some more formal times when the board would meet with maybe other district member input to start working like in a summer retreat or some kind of format in the summer where we start getting some really good ideas of what are our top priorities for the next year. Because that then would give us a window of time to actually start scoping out those projects and actually putting budget to those projects too. Like right now, these top 5 items that we sort of ideated about yesterday, I mean, there's no budget ideation around that. So we got to scope them out. We got to put some budget against that. And then we go, holy cow, that's $200,000. We go, yeah, but our assessment's only $88,000. So then we either have to scale back on those priorities or really think through more strategically about increasing our assessment, which is our last topic that we'll talk about. But that to me, now as a board, we start becoming a more informed board, and we start, if somebody says, well, why are we paying this assessment? We can say, here's exactly why we're paying this assessment. We are getting these priorities done for the district. We think it's the highest priority things. It's a way for the bid to then integrate with our Main Street program as our partner to execute that work with us. And to me, that just, as the chair of this board, it just makes it a richer experience as a board member versus you guys just coming in here and asking for a rubber stamp on the bid plan for next year. So that's a little bit of the context. So we took those bullets and then translate them into these ideas. And we can either just walk through these, Dan, quick,
Yeah.
or if you want, I mean,
Nope, that's fine.
the first one really was all around the whole branding and marketing initiatives. Like, could we get some more clarity around that, an actual action plan? And then as we scope that out, actually, how much of that can we do through volunteer and our current infrastructure versus needing to have professional help? Tina, I think there was some good examples of that in the past where you've actually used the combination of your team and some external, professional help with Bridget. It doesn't have to be Bridget, it could be other resources. But I love where expertise within the district even is starting to get leveraged, to get some really good work done. So that's that first one. And Bridget's actually raised her hand and said, I'd be happy to help, sort of shape that scope and help figure that out. The next one was, we had on one line, we had business recruitment and business retention. And it's like, okay, that's a bullet. And it's like, that's a big, huge thing. And we had some really good conversation about that we believe if you were to take those two and think about what is the highest priority to the bid district, we believe the retention piece should get significantly more focus and energy towards a game plan. And we just bulleted, some ideation around, welcome services, information, promote, a lot of the things that we're already starting to do, but starting to get that really super packaged. And I know the Economic Enhancement Committee has been working on that. We'd just like to get that super clear with some really good metrics to say, how are we doing on that? So number 3, quite honestly, from a weight standpoint, we think is much, 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 much smaller. That our conversation with our with the building owners was that we think the building owners could do a lot of the heavy lifting to help with this, but that there's not a real clear documented process in which we currently do that. And Andy actually offered, since he's been pretty active in that with both Dan and Tina, to just say, I'd be happy to work with them to just help clarify and document what that sort of protocol looks like. And then do we need some additional funds to go against that? I don't know. We'd have to scope that out. And then we've been talking about this for a couple of years, ever since the Mulva Center was identified. And then last week, we got some time with Mike Van Esten with our building owners, which was really the first time that we had heard publicly, like, what's coming. And holy cow. I mean, it's pretty exciting. But they're also new to this too, so they're sort of figuring it out, you know, as it goes. But there's a lot of planning that's starting to go into a next late summer, early fall kind of opening of the center. And we think, and Mike actually offered, however we can be helpful with you all, we want to be a partner in this. So I'm going to take him up on that. We're going to take him up on that as a board to say, all right, awesome. So how could we start getting more intentional with respect to what's about to come, as well as a successful launch? And then how do we very intentionally leverage the kind of foot traffic that they're hoping and intending to create in our downtown? And instead of that just happening to us and us responding to it, like, how could we get out in front of that a little more and more intentionally? And Mike has offered up to say, I'd like to be in conversation with you all with that. So I think that again, needs to be scoped out and figured out what kind of, I mean, there were technology ideas thrown around. We got Wild Blue right in our, not in our footprint, but in our downtown, that's some of the best tech solutions in the world is in De Pere, Wisconsin, that I'm not sure that we even as a community know much about. But there were some ideas that, could we even bring Wild Blue into this to ideate and create scope and even create some technology that could be helpful with this? And then finally, this was something that we had identified last year also that I just want to continue to, again, get super clear on and actually build out this calendarization. And I think this also continues to tie into those other sub-bullets around getting the database as rich as possible, with our goal being getting 100% of our downtown business owner or building owners actually in a database that we know is accurate, and so that we can do really effective communication. I've ramped up that communication from 0 to a couple times or 3 times a year, so hopefully that's been helpful. We've got probably 68 to 70 of those 145 actually identified in an email and phone number, but that's not good enough. I mean, we need all 145. So I want to continue to build out that database, build out the calendar, and then look at literally a regular rhythm of meeting throughout the year, of which this window of time would still be our official, board meeting time to actually approve a plan. But like, we don't have another board meeting outside of these formal things. I think I think the board should gather at least once or twice throughout the year on very specific, why are we gathering? Well, we're gathering because we need to do some ideation for next year's plan. And do we need to pull some of the other members in to do that? Absolutely, we can do that. So we'll take, I think that's a critical priority around just getting that calendarized and really socialized, within our district, that everybody goes, oh yeah, here's the annual calendar, and I want to be involved to be helpful in that. Again, that I think is going to give us great headlights. The 4 prior, but this one then will give us great headlights on, okay, so if we're getting into an assessment conversation, why, is the assessment amount right? Or other special projects that we want to do that could be funded by the assessment, and then that gets into a very intentional assessment review that again isn't coming at a November meeting and saying, hey, we want to increase the assessment, everybody vote yes. I think we'll put much more intentional planning into the context and the why we would be coming to the board and the community for an assessment increase. But we did say that we think, I think there's understanding around if we're going to start getting this clear, that an increase in the assessment then makes sense. Right now, there's just no clarification around the why of how much. And so my note back out to this team was, we're going to have some of that discussion today to start teeing that up, and Dan will do that in our next topic so that we have some insight going forward. And Dan's leaving.
He's got to be right back.
Any comments on these priorities? Again, our intent wasn't for that group to just say this is what it is and not have dialogue about it, but we'll be forwarding these priorities and comments back out to the entire district as well as asking. We basically have asked Dan and Tina now to be able to say, could you take this kind of focus and start putting that into a revised kind of rhythm of how we build out a plan?
Yeah, so we have about 12 minutes left because there is another meeting scheduled behind us. And I did want to have just a very brief discussion about what's in front of you. This is a combination of, one, the bid priorities. No, you can't.
Oh, you can't.
You can't, sorry. Bid priorities plus also guiding principles. There's a whole bunch of vernacular that was used. We assembled them all into one, removed a bunch of duplicates, and actually asked Tina to say, what else are you doing as an organization, as a definitely a peer organization, to include in there, and just to kind of show you where the overall thought process was from the building owners. So in the column that you do see, the first column that you see there is in green. That's kind of where our bid activity has sort of gone, and where the priorities from the property owners have stated this is where we'd like to focus you on. So in this column that you do see here, we may even pull a few more out, but our operating plan that we bring back in front of you will have a lot fewer actions, but a lot more targeted actions on it. So it's got to stay open.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, sir. So that's just an FYI for you. We also didn't try to put it into a priority category just for our understanding. So the bid plan that you will see will have much fewer items next year than you've seen it in the past, and that's intentional. So we just want to make the board aware of that. Okay. So with that moving forward, this is just for your information only. Tina and I will continue to refine this based off the conversation today and move forward. Now, all that being said, we are still proposing a nominal increase this year. We wanted to have a quick discussion about that one, primarily because of inflation. Cost of goods and services are going up. Cost of things to provide those services are still going up, but our assessments haven't increased. And when we take a look at our benchmark communities, we're sort of in the lagging behind category to provide those elements to meet those same elements of our peers, I guess you would say. So we're kind of showing a proposed increase of removing or increasing a 25-cent increase per thousand. We are also proposing to raise the cap from the 1950 to 3,000, which meets with our benchmark communities, and then eliminate the cap for multiple property owners. Those are three big things. Eliminating the cap. So I'll go through them each individually here, but what you can see is the impact of raising the cap actually impacts 11 property owners, of which 8 of them would then go from the increase to the or from the current cap. Oh, sorry, that says 1975. It's 1950 to the 3,000 cap. 3 of them wouldn't actually go up that high. They would probably be about a $500 increase, and then all of them would still remain under the previous cap. All 8 of those that are shown to go up above that previous cap would still actually be paying less next year than they are this year, and it's because our mill rate continues to drop, and I'll get that here in a second. Eliminating the cap for multiple property owners impacts 5 different property owners. I've removed their names for that intention purposes, but the first one is would actually have 2 properties at the max. The second one has multiple properties, but would actually have a net increase of about $1,100. Property owner 3 would have 2 properties, but would only have a $225 increase. And the last 2, property owner 4 and 5, would actually, because of the mill rate decreases, would actually still see a drop. So out of all that, of the 145, we are impacting a few, but the majority of individuals will still actually see, even with a 25-cent increase, the proposed mill rate drop is almost $1. per thousand. So we're actually proposing to see actually even less, even though the bid assessment may be increasing. So the mill rate impact, why the mill rate continues to drop. We closed TIDs 5 and 6. We've had great housing market growth, and we've also seen the housing market impact the prices. And as we do our annual reassessments, all of that is floating the downtown, I guess you would say, or buoying the downtown, because we have not seen pricing or value increases in our downtown since we started in 2014. The only time a property has increased in value is if they've taken a strategic approach to improve the property significantly. Some of those minor facade improvements haven't impacted, but if they've done big projects, they have, or if the property has sold, because then it's a arm's length transaction and gets reassessed that way. So, but the majority of properties have not changed, and actually some have actually decreased since 2014. Some of our even quality properties, I guess you would say, have actually even decreased. So overall, the impact of that one is we have not seen that increase. I just wanted to show that one, what that looks like. My things got moved a little bit, but in 2014 on the east side, we're at about a $21 per thousand. We're actually going to be potentially down to $14.50 next year. That's a significant change, a 30% drop in 8 years. When your value has not increased, that's a very significant decrease in your overall taxes and assessments paid. On the west side, because it's a separate school district, we've gone down from 20, almost 22 down to 17, almost 18. So that's an 18% drop over that time. So as I just put it in graph form, kind of shows you we are trending down, and it is, for me, from a TID perspective, this is hurting me to be able to do my job a little bit, because we need those TID values to help pay off projects that we bonded for 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it's a bit of a challenge there, but from the property owner's perspective, it is that win. Overall, you can take a look at what that looks like if your property was valued at $1 million, $750,000, $500,000, $400,000. You kind of see how that's broken down. You see the charts there. Overall, everyone's trending downwards. But if you can take a look at somebody who was on a $1 million building 8 years ago, had about a $20,000 tax bill, is down to $15,000. Cost of services aren't going down that percentage, but your overall tax bill is. So it's an important point to note that the residential and other growth outside of the downtown is buoying our efforts in downtown. So services haven't decreased from those perspectives either. Same city services, trash, sewer, water, stormwater, all those things are still there. We haven't cut services. It's just the tax bill has gone down for those owners. Same thing on the west side. You see it in visual format, and then you see it there in visual format as well. So as I kind of come back to this slide, while we are showing a proposed increase, out of the 145 owners that are being assessed, I would say about 95% of them will still see a reduction from their tax bill last year to this year. So
Does
just
that answer your question that you'd asked earlier?
Yeah,
told you to get dorky.
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Comments, questions? I had one sort of request as we think about those benchmark communities again. Could we just add a mill rate?
Yep. Yeah,
piece to that?
absolutely.
Oh,
Super
yeah.
helpful to
Absolutely.
see that.
We're in the village and town territory with our mill rate on the east side right now. We're sort of in the village city territory on the west side. Having two separate school districts really makes my life a little bit more complicated from a TID perspective, but overall, we can definitely provide.
Do you have any idea, like in Green Bay,
20.
in general, what it's about 20?
Yeah, it's in the 20s still. Howard is in the 14, Bellevue's in the 15, I believe. The towns are lower because they don't provide as many services. They don't provide parks. They don't have the the sewer and water. Typically, they don't have as many of those services, so they are going to be lower. But we're nearing those levels of what towns and villages were 3 or 4 years ago as well.
No. We're not voting on this. This is
Nope.
for information only.
Yeah. This is where we're moving forward based off of the discussions that we've had and wanted to bring forward to make sure that we can continue to meet that. So the proposed plan that you'll see at the next meeting will be different from previous years. It'll be much slimmer when it comes to its priorities, and it's going to be very targeted in our assessment increases. We're calling this one that inflation nominal increase to kind of catch up to where we need to be to do these elements.
So I want to get some advice from my board colleagues. So I was intentionally waiting to send out my communication from last week's Mulva Center update until we had this meeting, so that I could send one communication out on Mulva update and on just sort of this shift towards getting more laser focused on priority projects and this recommendation from staff related to assessment. And Dan, I think I would even include a couple of these slides just so that those examples are out there. Any other suggestions as far as how we should let the district know about this? That communication do it, do you think? Or do you think we need to do any kind of bring a small group together and just talk about this with Dan
That probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Do another meet and greet.
before the November
Yeah.
9th?
I think this is gonna
Or-
be kind of a big
Yeah.
situation. for some people.
Well, especially especially specifically these folks that are being,
Yeah, the interesting part is
Yeah.
the eliminating the property owner, multiple property owners, we're the only bid in the state that actually has that. So it's sort of in 2014 when we created it, it was, I guess, almost an olive branch for some of those business owners, but we are very unique in that aspect.
I've given that a lot of thought since you've brought this up initially though, and and I'm now taking my chair hat off and putting my building owner hat on as owning one building. I think we all look at our buildings as a separate pro forma. We don't, I mean, some may that have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or more, they look at it ultimately as a portfolio, return. But each building has got to stand on its own with respect to the pro forma of that business of that building. And so I don't understand why there would be an incentive for somebody that has the ability to have 3 buildings or 5 buildings or 20 buildings, why they would get an incentive to pay less. So I'm not saying that from my chair position. I'm saying it from but I'd love, Mary, for that conversation to happen. I think would be super helpful. So Dan, can you and I
Yep.
coordinate that?
Yep, we can.
And Tina, you'd be more than welcome in that too. But just from a staff perspective, I'd love to get that on our books before the 9th meeting so that.
And get
We
you
could-
some take-home one-pager type
Okay.
stuff.
All right.
All right,
Got 2
we got
minutes.
poll worker training after us, so
Yeah, but they don't start until 9 o'clock. So we
They
got
got 1
2 more minutes.
Tom, do you have any understanding from your conversations with the various property owners what kind of pushback there might be, or if people feel on board with supporting the bid? I know we've had some conversations in our meetings. I'm just curious if you've had conversations surrounding that.
I'm going to have Rich answer that from our.
Or are you saying supporting the bid or supporting this
Supporting
change?
potentially an increase. Do you think there would be pushback? Do you feel like they pay too much already or
I
not,
don't, I mean, based on what that says and how Dan explained it, there really shouldn't be. I mean, you've got some going down, some are, it's a nominal, but I think with Tom's agreement, I mean, there's a business in each one of those buildings that are reaping the benefits of bid assessment, so to me, I think it's a no-brainer, but, I mean,
Maya, I would say.
very few are affected there.
Yeah, and I would say, when we met as a small group yesterday, I think the general chatter, without going specifically at the numbers, was that there's an expectation of an assessment increase. I mean, just due to, all of our conversation was about how interest rates are rising and inflation is going crazy, and so I think from that perspective, there's probably, it wouldn't be a surprise, but again, I want the process to not build in surprises. This year could be a surprise because there just hasn't been any conversation about it in any of my communication out to the members. So that's why I want to get it in my communication, even though it's going to be short notice. And then if we could do a small group with some key individuals to just allow them to talk there, and then they can come here on the 9th also and talk. But I think and I also think with the opportunity to start focusing our priorities of what we want to come out of the bid investment, that should help reinforce, okay, then let's do an assessment that makes sense and aligns with those projects.
I think my only other concern, and I know we're at time, would be for this small inflation increase versus then potentially coming back around in another year to do like an actual increase. I think that needs to be part of the conversation because
I think
we
that's-
haven't had an increase in so long.
Right.
Yeah, I
that now
think
we're
that's what
gonna
our whole point of identifying those targets are, but also figuring out what is the budget allocation to those targets, so we actually know if there is gonna be an increase, what it should be backing into it versus trying to throw it on a dartboard.
And I'm gonna say that, Maya, right in my communication. That
Perfect.
this is intended to be a bit of a catch-up related to some inflation-related things, and then as we get more targeted with projects we wanna accomplish, the assessment should then start informing how much do we wanna do at once, or do we need to stage it over multiple years? All right, we're at time. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Second by Brent. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan and Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you.